taking refuge and generating an altruistic motivation. These are very key, like if you enter a house, you enter through a door. So for Buddhism, these two, refuge and the motivation, is like the gateway to, and then kind of that sets your path. The quality of your refuge and the quality of your motivation is what sets your path. But refuge is something. Of course, it's a coined term in Buddhism, but refuge is something that we undertake in our daily life all the time. If we are sick, we take refuge in our doctor, or if there's a particular medication that we know will take care of that problem, we take refuge in that pill. Or if we feel we are overweight, or we go take refuge in our gym. So refuge is not something new. It's really every day we are taking refuge in one thing or another. So without taking refuge, like from the morning we take refuge in our cup of tea or in our cup of coffee, we take refuge in our yoga if that's what we do, or we take refuge in our job for whatever the security it gives us, so it's not, sometimes we think refuge is something unique or particular to Buddhism, but it's nothing unique or particular. Our entire life consists of taking refuge left, right, and center. But we don't think this is refuge. But when it's like, to take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha is like something ethereal or something like, to be sort of kind of a story or kind of something, but it's nothing. Refuge is something we undertake every day, and without taking refuge, we cannot survive. From morning till night, 24 hours we are taking refuge all the time, and that's how we survive. But the refuge that we are used to taking in our daily life is refuge for our everyday survival. But here, this refuge that we are talking about is refuge for our mind, for our soul, for our heart. The everyday refuge that we are taking is for our body. It's for our physical security. But this refuge that we're talking about is for our mental security. And this refuge is not just for the refuge of this life, but it's a refuge that we're taking in terms of this life, next life, all the way to enlightenment. So that's the difference. So you don't think of refuge as something very foreign, something totally Buddhist or something religious. We are well versed in taking refuge. In our everyday life, we come up with the most skillful ways of taking refuge, most cunning ways of taking refuge. We are very adept at taking refuge because we are so, to protect our physical protection, our physical well-being is something that we are so good at taking care of. But on the other hand, our mental well-being we are not so good at taking care of. And so we are not so well versed with the refuge for our mind, protection for our mind. This is very foreign. And we are in a mess because we never took care of our mind. And so this refuge is to do with basically taking care of our mind, as opposed to the physical refuge of our everyday life. This is the mental refuge of taking care of our heart, taking care of our mind, taking care of our soul, taking care of our consciousness. So this is something that secures not only the well-being of this present, but all of our infinite future lifetimes until we attain enlightenment. So in that scope, you can say the mental refuge is so very, very important, And besides, it's it's our lack of knowledge of this mental protection or mental refuge that, that has sort of trapped us in what, that has sort of bound us to this kind of suffering nature of existence, Because you see, whatever physical refuge or physical protection, they are just temporary. The mental refuge is the most important. As long as we haven't secured the mental protection or the mental refuge, physical refuge means nothing. Because you see, as you say, it's always a case of mind over matter. As long as you don't take care of your mind, then no matter how much we may have secured for ourselves physically, it really doesn't mean that much if the mind is uncared for, is running wild. So the mental refuge is the most important. Why we have fallen short in our life is mostly because of the lack of the mental refuge, mental protection. And we can see for ourselves in our life that, no matter how much we have taken care of ourselves physically, and we may have resources for many future lifetimes to come, still it's not enough, we are not free from suffering, we are not free from heartache and pain and worry and fear and everything else. That only comes when we have gotten mental protection, mental refuge. Through that alone, you can overcome what we really are trying to overcome. Because with the physical refuge that we are so invested in our everyday daily life, it's not enough to reach that kind of, it's limited, it's conditioned, so there's no way it can take care of us the way we intend it to take care of us. So the Buddhist refuge is basically the mental refuge, your mental protection. So, and for that refuge, then, as we say, the Buddha is. Why do we take refuge? I say, if I was sick, what I would check out is, which place has the best facility to take care of my disease. I check out the place. Then when I've located that place, then I'll check out who's the best person to take care of me in that place. And then the next phase is what's the best treatment? What's the best treatment that that will take care of me? And then you go through all the support systems. So this is how you deal even with our own physical problems, isn't it? So in the same way, when we are going forth in mental refuge, then the process is the same. Where can I go? Who should I seek out? And what's the prescription? And do I have the support of the people who will help me to actualize it? So, so we are pretty much replicating what we do in our ordinary life, except it is in the context of something which you never dealt with before, our mind. Because we've been letting our mind run wild, physically we are at the service of our mind. And the mind is at the service of who? Our own ego, our own ignorance, our own delusion. So all we are doing is basically serving our ignorance and basically serving all our delusional emotions. And so then, of course, there's no end to the madness of our physical and verbal activities in that. So it's when we reflect on our situation in that light, then it's like pretty pathetic, It's like almost like a dog chasing your own tail, so busy doing that, and so, so caught up in ourselves. So anyway, so in that way, in the Buddhist context, we say like, for our mental refuge, the best source of our mental refuge, actual refuge, is the Dharma. Of course, then you have the Buddha, who kind of sort of basically teaches us what that Dharma is about, and then you have the Sangha, or the spiritual community, or your spiritual friends who kind of encourage you, who call out on you, when we are getting ahead of ourselves or something like that, So they are like your Sangha refuge. So in that context, when taking our mental refuge or mental protection, this mental protection, you have to think, you must know, you must understand that this is a protection not for just this life, but for infinite future lifetimes, all the way to enlightenment. So this is very important. It's very important, much more than the medication that we seek refuge in, or a drink that we seek refuge in, or this mental refuge in the teacher, the Buddha, his teachings, which is like the medication, the treatment, and the Sangha, which is like the support of the spiritual friend. So these three are the key to our mental refuge. You cannot do one without the other. Of course, the Buddha, he existed like more than 2,500-600 years ago, So, but for us, who represents the Buddha in our life is the spiritual teacher, who has the greatest effect on your mind, greatest effect in the sense of who's the most positively influential in your mind. So although oneself doesn't have the fortune of meeting the actual Buddha himself, the historical Buddha, but the spiritual teachers we encounter, and of course in our life we encounter many spiritual teachers. So, you can always consider the one teacher who has the most positive effect on you, most positive impact on your life, most positive inspiration. You can regard him as he's the Buddha for you. That is one way to reflect. Some consider like whichever was the first teacher that enabled you to get into your spiritual path, that is the Buddha for you, So basically, who is the Buddha for you today? The Buddha for you today is the one who has the most positive impact in your life, who kind of inspires you to do better in your life. He's the Buddha for you. Because you see, even if the historical Buddha was in front of you, apart from that inspiration, he's not going to do anything else other than to inspire you to become better, or to tell you or inspire you to do better in your life. Other than that, he's not going to do anything else. So, in the light of our present condition, your spiritual teacher, whoever that may be, is the representation of that Buddha in your life. Okay? And then, of course, no matter how compassionate, infinitely compassionate, or how infinitely powerful a Buddha may be, he cannot take away all your sufferings, nor can he, bestow you with all the realizations. The only thing that the Buddha can tell you, or your spiritual teacher, who is the representation of the Buddha in your life, the most that the teacher can tell you is what to do and what not to do. That's about it. Even if you go to the greatest specialist in this universe, and even though he may have all the knowledge and power and skill at his fingertips, but he cannot extract your disease. That has to be on the doing of the patient. He can prescribe the medication or the treatment or everything, and that's about all he can do. But getting better is on you, on the patient, So same thing with the Buddha, or the representation of the Buddha in your life, your teacher. No matter how compassionate, how powerful, how knowledgeable, there's no way, he can override your karma and make everything great and wonderful for you. That's on you. The most he can do is only advise you to do this and not to do this. And so that's where we are stuck, isn't it? Sure. So that's where we are stuck, That was one meditator, he says, if you know how to practice Dharma, there's nothing easier than practicing Dharma. But if you don't know how to practice Dharma, there's nothing more difficult than that. So basically it's up to you, It's basically up to you. And it's like, like for the patient, as long as this patient is fighting all the treatment, fighting against all the treatment, fighting against all the medication, then the only reality is the suffering. While that patient is fighting the doctor and fighting the nurses against all the treatment, against all the pills or the whatever, then what is in store for that patient is only suffering, and to be just wallowing in that suffering only. And as long as we fight that advice from our teacher, then we are caught up in our own mess, So we can see the actual refuge is actually like for the patient, the actual refuge is the treatment and the medication. Because that, when you undergo the treatment and the medication prescribed, that's the key to getting better. So for us also, doing what is asked for us and not doing what is asked of us is key to actual refuge. That's the actual. So the Dharma for us is the actual refuge, just like the treatment or medication is the actual refuge. And of course, many times we cannot make it on our own. We need a lot of support of our, spiritual friends to enable, if you had the best hospital and the best doctors, but if you didn't have all the other assistance in that medical field to, from if you enter a hospital, from the reception to the, all the way, from the billing to everything. If you don't, and nurses, if you didn't have all of the support, there's no way, just the doctor and all the, all those packages of medicine and all the machines is not going to help, without the support of the other people. So in the same way, it's very to have the support of us, Dharma friends, Dharma brothers and sisters. It's very important for our spiritual growth, at least in the beginning. Very difficult to make it on our own. So, because the hospital is a perfect example. You can have storerooms of medication and the best of the doctors and all the equipment, but without the staff that's manning every facet of that place, you cannot actualize it. Same, without the Sangha. So that's why it's so perfect how they set up what are your 3 ultimate refuge for you, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. This, for your mental refuge, you cannot get away from these 3, you cannot do without the Buddha, because you don't know how to actualize the actual refuge, the Dharma. and to actualize the actual Dharma refuge, you need the support of the Sangha. So those are your 3 refuge. So and the as I said before, refuge is something we are very familiar with. Protecting our refuge is basically protecting ourselves. Protecting us, and we are very good at it in terms of our physical well-being. We are very good at protecting ourselves. But it's the why this is foreign is foreign because it's not the physical protection. It's not the physical refuge. It's the mental refuge that we're in, and so therefore we are learning the ropes of it. But we have the idea. We are already practicing this 24 hours of the day. So now it just is, pertaining to our mental refuge, mental protection. So, and then to know that this is something that we need all the way until we are enlightened. So you can do away with it only when you become enlightened. Until then, we probably have to invest in these 3 refuge. So that's the part of the refuge, okay? So then if you turn to, it kind of talks about, the do's and don'ts when you do take refuge. So after you take refuge in a Buddha, enlightened being, then it says, don't take refuge in anything less than that, because it's a disrespect to what you have taken refuge in. And that's a very it's common sense, isn't it? Like you say in our everyday life, if you have this very knowledgeable specialist person here, and then you go falling over yourself over someone who is far less than this person, it's complete disrespect to this person, isn't it? Or say the Prime Minister of India is here, but you're making a whole, you go falling over yourself, say respecting the Chief Minister of Bihar. That's where I came from. So it's a total disrespect to the Prime Minister of the country. So this is the ideology is the same. So it says, don't take refuge in anything less after you have. Why take refuge in anything if you have found refuge in enlightenment? Why do you need refuge in anything else? That's the whole thing. So, and So that's the main thing. And then of course, when you take refuge in Dharma, so it's a having taken one should avoid harm, because the foundational principle of Dharma, of the teachings of the Buddha, is not harming. So, abandoning violence, abandoning harm towards others is the very key to taking refuge in the Dharma. You see, if we still, hold on to harm, hold on to violence and harm towards others, then we utterly disrespect our refuge in Dharma. Why take refuge in? Because the foundational principle of Dharma is non-violence, not harming. And so, just like when we have taken refuge in an enlightened being, to make a big deal of someone or an entity that's anything less than enlightened is a disrespect. In the same way, when we have sought refuge in Dharma, that's going to, this prescription, this treatment, this medication that's going to enable you to become Buddha or enlightened, make you the most, make you the most perfect thing that you could ever become. And then you go against the very grain of it, which is then violence, harm. So that's the thing to abandon. And then then having taken refuge in Sangha, is in spiritual friends, but Sangha basically is, people who are aspiring to virtue, aspiring towards virtue. So if you have, decided to, invest yourself in that, nurture yourself with virtuous aspirants, then to invest in negative friends, non-virtuous friends, then it's like going. It's what undermines the refuge in the Sangha. So it's pretty common sense, isn't it? All this, it's just telling you, what are the things that undermine your refuge, basically. This, and then the next three is telling us how to enrich your refuge in your life. What are the things that help enrich, that nurture the idea of refuge in our life? This kind of mental protection, mental refuge in our life. So over here it says, having taken refuge in Buddha. So anything that which symbolizes an image of enlightenment, anything that, even if it's like a statue or a painting or anything that is a physical, because enlightenment is a perfection of the state of mind. So there's nothing to see or touch. So for us, what symbolizes that for us are all the images, enlightened images. So having taken refuge in Buddha, in Buddha, then when we see any images of enlightenment, then to think of it as the actual Buddha, to train our mind to think of it as the actual Buddha. What's the blessing in doing that? what's the point in doing that? Is that if you see these images as representations of an enlightened mind, and thereby, honoring it, appreciating it, respecting it, by that much more our mind is blessed with that positive energy. If we regard it as just a piece of paper with some artwork or some image that's been carved out, if we view it with ordinary mind and if we view it with an ordinary outlook, regarding it as an ordinary image, then there is no impact on your mind other than it being another material thing. But when we see these images and then regard it as these are all images that represent an enlightened mind that I'm aspiring to achieve, and in that we recognize it for what it is and honor it, whether be it with a hand gesture, or be it with bending our heads, be it with prostration. By that gesture itself, you are blessed with that enlightened energy. So you see, when we don't respect whatever it is that we are trying to achieve, we will never achieve it. The bottom line to actualizing our goals is when we respect those goals. So, for us, these pictures, these statues, are physical representations of enlightened mind. And in our mind's recognition of that, and in our physical gesture of honoring it, by that much more, we have used this opportunity of this encounter to further bless our own mind. It's like one person comes and sees this, looks at it as a material thing. And the person has, you can say, having encountered the image, it has a positive interaction, but there's no blessings. But then another person comes and views it as an enlightened, representations of enlightened mind, and honors it. The two experiences miles apart. How we receive blessings from images like that, how we receive blessings, it's not something tangible that can be seen, but it is received. That's why, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, there are many statues that have spoken to different lamas. Like when you go to, especially in Tibet, because the monasteries are so ancient, for so many, hundreds of years, they'll say, oh, this statue spoke to this person, this statue spoke to, and then there are some statues that grow teeth, some statues that grow hair, and so these are like unbelievable phenomenon, but these things have happened because of the power of the faith of the people. So you talk about will I receive blessing if I honor these images as enlightened beings and honor them? Will I receive blessings or not? Whether I receive blessings or not depends on my faith and devotion, not on that image. It's the power of my own faith and devotion that defines how much blessing I receive. And it is because of that you hear about stories of these particular individuals that used to hold conversations with statues. For one person, it's a live, vibrant thing. For another person, it's a statue. So that's this is the So therefore, always when we see representations of enlightened images, be it a picture, be it these are like traditional tankas or statues, once we take refuge, we must honor it. In order to honor our own refuge, because by not honoring it, especially after taking refuge, then we are undermining our own refuge. And in honoring it, we have everything to gain. So that's the thing. And then also the other thing is like, once we take refuge, also it says that, because we can no longer treat it as ordinary base object. So, even engaging in activities like, using it as a business venture to support my lifestyle is also not allowed. Because then you have also, reverted what was a very highly honored thing into another commercial object. So also that's again, that also is a big no-no. So often, so also when after we take refuge, then we cannot, support our lifestyle, make a livelihood of our enlightened images. That's the thing. That's another thing. And then the next, and of course, when you put it anywhere, you put it in a place of respect. So don't leave it on the floor. Don't go like, climbing over it or stepping over it or things like that. Those are all actions. It's like, if you bought a few $1 million some Picasso painting, you wouldn't leave it on the floor. You take care of it, you treasure it and put it somewhere, because of its monetary value, But that painting is only for this lifetime. But these images are the images of, until enlightenment, you're going to be hanging on to it, You're going to be it's the effects of this is something you're investing in for all of your future lifetimes. So you have to honor it much more than the most costly, artwork kind of thing. And then the second one is that when you take refuge in Dharma. So all our materials like books, material resources that convey the Dharma information also has to be honored in the same way we honor the images. So again, like sometimes when we have jewelry or some very expensive clothing, we put it in the most nice encasement, take care of, make sure. It's the same thing, because these are not material, but it's what feeds our heart, our mind, our soul, or whatever, So we have to honor this again, and like the thing, again, we cannot use this as a means of, securing our livelihood on it, like making a business out of selling this thing, like that. I remember, like, for example, Lama Zopa, in America, there's wisdom publications, and they publish a lot. And sometimes Rinpoche, the publication invites Rinpoche when, I think they're in Boston, and Rinpoche is invited to tea. And Rinpoche, the publication offers tea, but because the whole thing is run on the salary and everything's run on books. So Rinpoche, they'll offer tea, but Rinpoche will not drink any tea at all. The same thing happens like when Rinpoche goes in Nepal, especially when we go to these tanka art shops, and because usually these cost like 30,000-40,000 rupees, so they give you tea and everything. So Rinpoche will absolutely refuse to drink water, drink tea, So it's like you're in try not to be rude, also not to drink at the same time. So there's all this hop and skip all around the thing, tea, and so Rinpoche is very, very careful. And also sometimes people who do businesses in Dharma books and images, when they come with offerings to Rinpoche will, if it's for example, if they come with a bag of fruits, Rinpoche say, throw it somewhere where nobody will eat it. There's this nice basket where where to throw it, where no one will get to it, I mean, of course, if they offer money, then Rinpoche just puts it back into wherever statues are being made or things like that. Because I'm just using Rinpoche's example to show how careful he is with the, because it completely undermines our refuge, and this is our entry into the Dharma, So, and so like that, and mostly, all the resources that we have that, that is the medium for us to get our Dharma knowledge, then to respect and honor it. And it's the same. If we don't treasure this booklet through which I am getting all the information, knowledge of my refuge, if I don't respect it, then the kind of the quality of my refuge will be as bad as how I treat this, So how much benefit our mind is going to receive is really dependent upon how much we appreciate these mediums, kind of like that. And then the third is and then respecting the Sangha, isn't it? Showing respect towards the Sangha, kind of like that. And Sangha needn't necessarily only be in robes as such. All your friends who inspire you to do better in your life, and who call you out on your failure, on your negativity, they are all Sangha. Anyone who inspires you to do better. So that covers the do's and don'ts of taking refuge. Okay, so then it says I think the rest of it's pretty, after we take refuge, some of the traditional things we do to keep touch base with our refuge in our everyday life. It's like every time we get up in the morning, before we do anything, we offer 3 prostrations to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha to remember refuge. Before we go to bed, the first 3 things, the last thing you do before, going to bed is, prostrations. That's how you, morning and evening. Then, in the course of the day, when we eat or drink, making offering to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. These are just helping our mind to touch base with keep in touch with what we have, invested ourselves in. So these are just like tools. So it's not like coming to a center thing, but in our everyday life, touching base with our sense of refuge. So I think that's basically the groundwork, the bottom line of refuge. Of course, then it also talks about, taking usually when we take refuge, together with refuge, there's the opportunity is given for you to take the 5 lay precepts as well, and there is always this thing of, although I haven't taken refuge, I'm pretty much a Buddhist kind of thing. It's very two different things, It's like saying like being married and being together. It's two very different things. You live with your partner together, or you get married. The sense of commitment is very different. So it's the same. It's one thing to say, I'm pretty much a Buddhist, even though I haven't taken refuge, and to have taken refuge. It's miles apart, these two. In the same way with, even though I have not taken vows to not to kill, or precepts to not to kill or steal, I don't kill, those two are miles apart. Actually taking a precept, a vow, or a commitment to not to kill, and to anyway not to kill, they are miles apart, these two. When we actually take a vow, make a commitment to not to kill, then in all the while, in the end, from that moment of taking the vow up to death, we have the merit of not killing. In the other action of anyway not killing, we don't have merit of not killing. That's the difference. You may anyway not be killing, but you do not accumulate any meritorious blessing of not killing. But on the other hand, when we make from this time onwards until I die, I will not kill, then in all the while of not killing until death, for all that minute, for all that second, you constantly accumulate the blessing of the meritorious blessing of not killing. So that's the difference. And so, if you're anyway not going to kill, you're better off taking that vow, isn't it? It's like it's more advantageous to take that vow than not to take that vow. And of course, of the 5 precepts, especially with the principle of taking refuge, if you don't take that vow, then why take refuge? At least that. Because these 5 vows, you can take all 5 of them, or just 4 of them, or 3 of them, or 2 of them, but you have to take at least one there, the vow to not to kill, that's a must, And also, it helps our mind, it trains our mind, it strengthens our minds towards commitment. By taking a precept like that, these are the small ways how we strengthen our mind to greater responsibility, to greater commitment in our life. If we are not able to take that much responsibility, or not commit ourselves to that even in such a minor way, then what are we responsible for? What is my life committed to anyway? So these are the small ways in which you can build our own inner strength, our core principles, like that. And also, I think these are very basic, not stealing, I think adultery, telling lies, and intoxicants, very pretty much all. I mean, of course, although number 5, intoxicants, doesn't look very harmful, but sometimes this can cause all the other things to happen. It looks like the least dangerous one, but you can end up doing all these other things because of that. So what looks like not so harmful can be the most harmful also. So I mean, I think other than that, I think everything else is very sort of so. And of course, Ovia is talking about. So it's very important to create these kind of positive principles in our life, positive habits in our life. Because you see, whatever we habituate ourselves to in this life is what we are going to run with for all of our future lifetimes. And that's the sad part, For example, when you look at kids, very young children, say nobody teaches them how to lie, but then intuitively some children know how to tell lies, come up with the most brilliant ways to tell lies. But nobody's taught them how to tell lies. But then intuitively, where do you think this quality comes from, other than it being its habit from its past life? Or you can talk about some children that are naturally really kind, good and kind. And then compared to its other brothers and sisters, this one's a very uniquely kind person. That comes from his or her own past lifetime's habit. Like you can, in this, we are the sum total of everything we have been in the past. So you can see in children, you can tell them don't steal, don't lie, but they do it anyway. But it's the habit from the past, So therefore, in this human realm, we have the opportunity to correct all the wrongs. In other life forms, we don't. It's very difficult to correct all our wrongs. There's not only with this human intellect we have the opportunity to correct all our wrongs. You see, when you take the scale of killing, you have not killing up to the other extreme of the sadistic pleasure in killing, sadistic pleasure in killing, to like totally abhorred with any act of violence or killing. So you have kind of this opposite scale. So you think, where am I on the scale? So you want to push yourself all that, that even at the cost of my life, I'm not going to kill. At the cost of my life, I will not kill. That's where you want to get. Because when you tip the scale on the other side, then you're in total mess. It's same. Stealing is the same. For some, even at the cost of their life, they might not steal. Then others, for whom it's become such a psychotic thing that it's a pleasure to steal. They get a kick out of stealing. So you have these kind of two extremes. Then to work your way back from that sadistic state to the other takes many, many, many lifetimes. So anyway, the main thing I want to say is that taking vows, taking this kind of commitment, these kind of precepts, helps to push our mind towards the positive side a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, until we perfect it within ourselves, where it's without question. It's without question, no killing, without question, no stealing, without question, no lying. Kind of, you want to that. Basically, it's like that. So I think that should cover all our refuge. But any questions?
You said every morning and evening after the refuge we have to prostrate. And then how do we offer food before eating our meals?
You can make up many prayers, but one prayer is like, may myself and all others, in all our lifetimes, may we never be parted from the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. May we always be able to make offerings to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and may we forever always receive the blessing of the Guru and the Triple Gem. So like this, there's many different kinds of offering prayers, but this is something very, each line has refuge all the time. May myself and all others in all our lifetimes always never be parted from the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, and may we always be able to make offerings like this to the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, and may we always receive the blessings of Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. And this is for yourself and for all sentient beings. So this is how, so by thinking like this, by just saying that mentally, and of course there's a little mantra called Om Ahum, Om Ahum, Om Ahum. Yeah. Om Ahum. Yeah. So these 3 syllables is like the divine blessings of the enlightened body, speech and mind's blessings. So Om Ahum. But the stanza is like that. But as you become more familiar with Buddhism, you will come across many different prayers for offering. Yeah, so that would be something you could keep in mind. But it's a way of always keeping refuge in your heart. Another question? I must have done a good explanation. No questions. Anyway, I think, go ahead.
It says receiving a downfall or losing the vow from the root. Did you discuss that?
Which one? Say that.
The losing the vow from the root or receiving a downfall.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything you want to say about that? It says which must be confessed if one transgresses.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, for example, say you took a vow not to kill or not to lie, but because of habit or because of under certain emotion you went and killed a spider or a mosquito or whatever. But the thing is to become aware of what you did, or to become aware of having lied, or become aware of the act of stealing. And then there are, prayers that we can do in acknowledging the wrong that one has done, and then making a prayer to purify it. So there are many, like any virtuous thing, like even just taking refuge is purifying. Even generating bodhicitta is purifying. Even saying a mantra or doing anything positive is purifying. Even regretting that very act of having, in that moment, stolen or lied or whatever, or killed that mosquito, regretting that I did that. These are all of confessing or purifying that downfall. Yeah, kind of like that. So the good thing about negative actions is that they can be purified. But on the other hand, it doesn't mean that because it can be purified, you go on doing
But
it.
sometimes we have to lie to a person who's suffering, and if we tell him the truth, he may die.
Mm.
So in that case, the lie that we say, that has to be purified.
Of course, in most cases, it's the motivation. With what motivation?
Intention.
Yeah, in every action, there's the motivation, the action, the completion of the action. At best, you want it all three to be good. But at the very least, you want the beginning and the end to be good. The motivation good and the end result good. Even though this might not be quite the right way to do it. But as long of the three part, you must get the motivation and the end result right. That's, but at our level, it's better to try to get all three, But if not all three, try to secure the motivation and the end result. Like, for example, say there's a person chasing this person to beat him, and you've seen him go this way, and the person's asking which way did he go, and you point him the other way, And so he didn't go that way, he went that way, but your motivation's right, and you saved the day for both of these two individuals, It's kind of like that, Because sometimes it doesn't quite work to explain to this person why he shouldn't be beating up on this, and it takes, you'll probably get beaten yourself. Okay, go ahead.
I have a question. This might be very mundane. If you take these vows and you say you won't kill, you eat what without killing.
Mm-hmm.
In a situation which is, I feed about 30 to 40 dogs at night in my city, which is Calcutta.
Mm.
And what does one do? I mean, does it that's their nature, that's their food. Like when one rescues an elephant, it's a vegetarian thing, it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But when you rescue these dogs?
Dogs?
Dogs, yeah. I feed dogs in the streets.
Mm.
And what do you give them? And that's still...
You can give vegetarian to the dogs.
So it's, all the way there,
I mean, like,
where do
dogs, you can pretty much feed them a vegetarian diet, can't you? No?
I don't know. Naturally, I mean, it's a hunter.
The dogs, no, not so much. I think there are some dogs, not all. Of course they prefer the meat, but you don't have to give them. It's another thing when you are raising like snakes or something, then you feed them rats or something, then it's like, I don't know, then I think you better leave those pets to their own karma, you don't have to first make it easy for them, But the dogs, I think you can get away with feeding them. I've known dogs who eat vegetables as well. So,
I think Rinpoche has dogs that he feeds. I've seen he's got a kind of a system where he feeds all animals.
Oh yeah, Rinpoche. Of course, you know what Rinpoche does, Lamazo Rinpoche?
Yeah.
He buys momos, momos, and then he holds this momo and he holds it and he says this long prayers. But he holds the momo in front of their nose and they're waiting and waiting, And just when he's about to give up, then he gets the momo. So they really have to work for it. I remember. Really, Rinpoche blows mantras on them, says prayers and everything, but it's like, just when it's about to give up, then he gets it. Like when it reaches the point where, forget it, I'm not when he gets it. That's when he gets it, So Rinpoche really makes them work hard. work hard for their one more, you know. So, I mean, that's the whole point of them. Of course, the means was the momo with this meat dumpling, but Rinpoche's main intention was the prayer, you know. I remember many years ago, I think like 81 or 82, we had a retreat in Tushita in Dharamsala, you know, and I remember Rinpoche made one nun and myself, you know, we had to go every day. That time there were like 10, 11 dogs. Like we had quite a huge pen in all these dogs. And then we had to recite 2 prayers and 3 principal aspects of path and foundation of all good qualities. So every time they got fed, that was the time when we had to go. And so while they were chop eating, we had to sing all those prayers. And our prayers had to be done when their meals were done, you know, because otherwise they'd go running in 10 directions, you know. And then because we had to time the speed of our prayers to the meal. Then Rinpoche sent a message saying, "Are you waiting to catch the train? You say you're just doing the prayers so fast, you know." Because we had to chant very loudly for them. But for us, you know, we had to be done when their little bowl was done, you know. Others they're all over the place, you know. And they go barking left, right, and so on. There's no way we could get them to listen. Because when all the bowls came, then we closed the pen off, and then everyone just was together. So and then while they were just munching away, we did all our prayers at that time. So, anything else? Okay, we are done. Okay, so let's do the dedication just to complete it off. Anyway, I just want to say it's very fortunate to be receiving refuge from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So if you turn to page 6. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of a Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May their precious body mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May their born have no decline, but increase forevermore. May all sentient beings who have all been my mother and father be completely happy, and may the lower rungs be forever empty. May all the prayers of the bodhisattvas in whatever places they live be immediately fulfilled. Whatever right virtues I have created, I dedicate as causes, enabling me to uphold the Buddha, scriptures and insights, and to fulfill without exception the prayers and deeds of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 3 times. By the force of this merit, may I never be parted in all my lives from the 4 wheels of the Mahayana vehicle, and may I enter the journey along the paths of renunciation and bodhicitta, pure beauty and true stations of the tantric practice. Okay, thank you very much.